What's up, y'all? This is Hussein from IGeometry, and today, as you can see, we have a different kind of episode. So, I decided to take a break from casual programming of just exploring whatever there is in ArcGIS technology, and I've been doing so far the C Sharp ArcGIS add-ins on top of 10.3.1 with C Sharp, so how to write extensions on top of the ArcGIS technology. And I just feel that in the channel, we've been a little dated compared to the technology that is actually evolving. So I'm actually working with a lot of newer technology, and whatever I'm posting in the channel is actually dated. I would like to kind of steer this channel into another direction where we actually explore new stuff, so, and one of the really cutting edge or bleeding edge technology is actually the technology of Docker. I mean, most of you obviously, some of you have heard about this technology, so I'm gonna quickly talk about Docker, and then I want this episode to be a kind of short. I don't know if it will be like a series or talk or anything else. I just felt like talking about this technology with respect of ArcGIS. I mean, how can we apply Docker? First, we need to explain what Docker is, and then how can we apply Docker with ArcGIS, this ArcGIS stack. So I'm not. This is a disclaimer. I'm not an expert in Docker whatsoever. I just played with it a little bit because I wanted to work with Docker for a year now, but I didn't have a chance. But I will always ask myself question, okay, if there's a new technology, how can I put it to use? All right. So this is the question that I'm trying to answer with every episode I record, so that I have a problem or some sort of a question I need to answer, and then I make a recording. And actually I found one way where I can apply Docker, but this episode is dedicated to where exactly we can apply this technology in the ArcGIS stack. So there are a lot of problems, obviously. So we're gonna talk about it really, and that's these problems of, these integrating these two pieces of technology is basically related to the decision that ArcGIS, basically ESRI in general, made during these years. So we're gonna talk about all this. So what is Docker as a start? What is Docker? So Docker is this, basically the icon on the left, my left. So and so Docker is, I guess before we explain Docker, we have to explain what a VM is, because this is just like, this is my understanding and my explanation. I didn't read some sort of a definition. I'm not giving any official definition here. This is just my understanding. So if you go back, way back, you have a physical machine, right? So you have your computer and this PC, whatever. Okay, so this physical machine has resources like this much RAM, this much CPU, and it was kind of expensive to run different machines, right? So you have to actually have a machine and have one operating system, or active operating system on it, and then you run your stuff on it, right? So you have your database server or web server or whatever. So you need a machine dedicated, and then you put your pass on them, the platforms, right? So this is what we know, right? Then someone really smart said, okay, why don't I have just one machine and I virtualize the concept of machines into something called virtual machines? So you still have one physical machine, but you can have theoretically many virtual machines on top of them, having different operating systems. Like you can have one machine, physical machine, like very powerful server, and then you put like you can install one VM, and that VM has Windows on them. Another VM has uh, like Linux. Another VM has Windows 2012 server, and that one is your database, one is your web server, and you can go from that. And that worked really well because I don't have to buy expensive machines anymore. I don't have to have one big, different big physical machines anymore. I have virtual machines, and I can control that. I don't have. I can have one big. Uh, okay, let me this back. All right, so I can have one big. Are we actually recording? Yes, we are recording. Okay, so we can have one big machine with very powerful machine, and then you can put stuff on it, like put different virtual machines on them, right? So that worked really well, right? So people like, okay, let's spin off a VM, and then all these companies went in and just giving out VMs, VMware, one of them, virtual box, Oracle virtual box is another one, so you can actually use virtual box. And I have VirtualBox installed in this Mac, and I am running Windows 8, I think, on that. So this allows us to do stuff that was impossible before. Like now, you can play games on your Mac that only run on PC because you can only install VM. So this opened a lot of stuff. Right? I don't want to dwell into too much into it. So this is the VM. This is the virtual machine. This concept of virtual machine there's a little problem with it, but people realize it later uh, in the timeline. So the problem is that okay, now I can have different virtual machines, but they are actually expensive because each virtual machine. Let's say you have one physical machine and you want to run 10 or for example 2 database server, three web servers. These virtual machines in this case share actually the operating system. When I say share, I mean they have actually the same operating system. So I'm running, for example, Windows 2012 on all of them server. So this seems like a redundancy. I'm managing, so I have one physical server, but I'm installing Windows 5 times. So 5 virtual machines, and I have 5 operating systems installed in each of them because each virtual machine, and then all these overhead stuff, right? So all this operating system is the overhead here. So someone really smart said, okay, what if keep your virtual machine, keep your physical machine. Okay, and this is where Docker came. So, I mean, the idea of Docker actually was there way before, right? But Docker just implemented it a very simpler way. That's what I understood. Yeah, I'm not an expert again. All right, so what Docker said, okay, let's take these operate. Let's go back to our 5 virtual machine example here. What if Okay, so in your example, your your virtual machines here, you have what 2 database servers? Let's say two Oracle instances, and and the 3 of them are web servers, for example, right? And 3 web servers communicate to the database, which are to do 2 databases, and there may be replication between these 2 databases. I don't know. So it says, okay, you have the operating system as a common denominator. I don't know how to spell it. It's a common denominator. Is that right? I don't know. Okay, don't make fun of me. All right, so it's a common stack, and what he's taking it is that he said, let's take that as a factor and run those servers or those programs or applications, run them as processes in the same physical machine. But you can share this operating system, but your stuff runs in a single process called the jailed. Some call them jailed, or some call them jails, or they sometimes call them containers. So this is one container, as it's a single process that actually have everything you need, and it's sharing the physical machine operating system or whatever. If it's running on the virtual machine, it will be sharing the operating system. So that's basically Docker. Docker allows you to run containers of your entire setup. So you know how much this saves time. So this is the definition of Docker. So an example how Docker will be valuable. So in this case, in my database platform, so database needs tuning, configuration, dependencies, ugly dependencies you have to install, and you have to install this. If in the case of virtual machine, you have to physically install this every time, right? I mean, one can argue you can clone a virtual machine, but this can cause you problems if you're using Windows. Yeah, so some licensing issues and all. But the idea is that you can create this setup of database with the database server and all these configuration, and then you create an image out of this concept, all these setups, and then you spawn containers of what, of these, basically, of this setup and that, and it will run perfectly. It will have its own IP. This container will have its own IP. It will have its own exposed ports, and it will run smoothly. So that is, in a nutshell, that is Docker. So now that we explain what Docker is, I want to illustrate or explain how can we apply this technology in the ArcGIS stack. All right, so in order to do that, another thing about Docker before we go on, right? Docker is designed to run only on Linux. So that's one big problem between us and ArcGIS, the platform, and Docker, right? Because there's some challenges to be faced here, because ArcGIS mainly run on Windows, but we have other stuff that runs on Linux. So I'm going to explain that. So before we go down this path, or basically of where Docker fits in the ArcGIS stack, we have to explain what is the ArcGIS stack currently. Right? So let's do that. So let's close that, and so the ArcGIS technology. All right. So I'm gonna explain it first. There are actually many types. All right. First started as a just file system working with shape files. That was in the 70s or 80s, and then the concept of relational database came in, and we in Esri basically implemented that, and then we adopted this relational database, and then we became like a rigid client server. So this is what I'm going to explain now, the client server approach. So now this part going on in this episode, we're going to explain the ArcGIS stack. Maybe we're going to continue and see where Docker fits in this stack. All right, so let's do that. Right, so first of all, so the concept of this is the ArcGIS stack in terms of a client-server architecture, right? So you always have your database server here, right? And it is exposing a port, and then you have basically your client here, right? So your client could be like ArcGIS. In this case, can we make this bigger? Right, so like ArcGIS is a client here, like that, for example, ArcMap or GIS Pro, right? So this could be like, these are example client server clients. So all right, so this And the database servers, examples of database servers are basically, we are currently supporting a lot of servers, so Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres. That's only examples. We're supporting more than that. I have to check the list, but these are the database servers that we are. This is the database server. So this is, think of this as an instance of Oracle running or SQL Server or Postgres. Nothing on it, except maybe you have to have like some dependencies like STGeometry and all these things. There's no ArcGIS software installed on this machine. All right, if you are putting the server as a standalone, you don't have to install any ArcGIS stuff except for that particular DLL, which basically enables the shape of geometry in this database. All right. So what happens that the cool thing about this client ArcGIS, there's no ArcMap for Oracle or ArcMap for SQL Server or ArcMap for Pro. That's the cool thing about this, right? So we built a layer on top of that client called the SDE, but it's hidden. We don't talk about it anymore. Esri don't talk about it anymore. So this is called a spatial database engine, and that is like an abstraction. We have actually a spatial SDE for Oracle and SQL Server and Postgres, but with all these years, this is dissolving into the client itself, right? So there are a lot of historical things that I don't want to talk about, but I'm gonna talk about what is currently we have now. All right, so this is your client, and then it just establishes a connection, right? Very simple, to the server. That's how it works, right? So this is how it works. A client and a server. These could be in the same machine. Both of them could be in the same machine. There's nothing stopping you from installing, for example, ArcMap on the same machine that have your Oracle, for example. Yeah. Only limitation is that this should run on what? Windows. We do not have ArcMap for Linux, right? It's a client, and this client is designed basically for Windows, so you have to run it on Windows, right? So this case, Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, they don't have to run on Windows. You can have them on a SQL Server, have to, of course, because I don't know if there's a SQL Server for Linux. I think it's coming out. I read an article somewhere. But Postgres, you have a Postgres for Linux, Ubuntu, Oracle. There's obviously a Linux version of that and Windows. So if you have your database installed on Windows Server, you can install ArcMap in the same machine. But this is not our talk here, right? So but that could be like the OS, could be. So just for the sake of the argument, you have to have this basically in an operating system, right? This is important. All right, so we have these two guys. Now, how do I add a slide here? Seriously, copy. All right. I'm used to PowerPoint, not used to Keynote, so. All right, so this is one approach, the client-server approach, right? Another thing that had been there for a while now is you can still have your database server, but you can layer it with something called, dun, 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 some of you guessed it, ArcGIS server. No, we got now ArcGIS 4 server, right? And that, by the way, ArcGIS for desktop. So let's follow the marketing for desktop, right? That's one approach, right? And that's the third kind of approach is to have ArcGIS server, and then ArcGIS server will connect to your database, as a client server, same concept exactly, all right? And then you can have a thin client. So these are thick clients. So I'm gonna use a different color for thin client. I don't know, let's use a triangle. I know I'm not using some standard approach here, I'm sorry. So browser, I don't know why did I use triangle? So it's just a simple browser, or doesn't have to be browser, by the way. Mobile, right? This layer of ArcGIS server actually abstracts that, and now you can access this from literally anywhere, right? Because this exposes what happens, that ArcGIS server exposes the database as services. I mean, part of the database, whatever you need, it exposes this as services, and then from the browser you access services, right? Of course, this is a very complex component. I have my book, Administrating ArcGIS for Server, that actually talks about all these components and how to set up your instance of ArcGIS service. There is a lot of stuff, and I can talk about it maybe in the next episode or so, right? So obviously, this will be running into multiple episodes, right? So I want to make it a short episodes here. And maybe in the next episode, we're going to talk about where Docker fits in this. And I need to take more time explaining this, because where Docker fits here and here is actually makes more it will be meaningful to explain the whole stack in details, all right, before just making decisions, right? So we have to explain this in more details. All right, so this is another approach of this, right? The third one, which in Israel we are actually pushing this, right, which is the cloud technology, is make everything into the WebGIS, basically. So we're gonna isolate the whole thing here, right? So you as a client, you don't see anything else. You don't talk to ArcGIS server. You talk to the WebGIS, which is basically ArcGIS. Could be ArcGIS Online and Portal for ArcGIS and all these stuff, right? So this is the idea, and then this breaks down into a lot of components, right? Itself, it has a lot of components, including ArcGIS for server. So you can see this layering system, right? And since we're talking about this, let me just add another slide here, right? Even way before, right? So, all right, so this file system. So that was the first approach, right? So first thing, I need to add that, I think. So first thing was that you have your file system, and then these clients, basically, this is not even a client, this is just a software now, right? So this was like back in the day, ArcGIS, right? So you can explain that, right? So you can consume a file system, so local files. These are local files. So this is the first era, right, where basically databases they were existing, but still they were very bleeding edge at that time. So the concept of file system, shape files, everybody's still being used to this day, right? But it's very interesting, so you have your file system and it's actually part of the machine, and it could be living on a network, right? So I like to basically separate them, because you can actually have your file system on another machine, it's fine, but still you consume it, and then you have your network overhead here, All right, so this is the first layer. The second one is they're actually running a database, a transactional database. So this is, I have to say, like a transactional database or relational, right? Because that's what these databases are. They are relational databases, right? And then we have the relational databases, relational database server, and then you have the same concept here, right? So, but you don't see these layers, right? So we're gonna expand this. In the next episode, we're gonna go in each one and gonna expand them. Obviously, this episode will run along. I don't want to talk about in 1 hour to talk about the whole thing. I want to digest this, right? So take time to digest these 4 diagrams, you know. So this is the future. This is the cloud. You took into a cloud of maybe you don't know how many machines are running here. You just know one endpoint, and that's maybe an application, and you consume that application, and that application takes you to different layers of the stack, but you don't know. That's the beauty of this, because this is a shareable platform. There's a lot of community in this. We took this from a native file system into a WebGIS. So this is the ArcGIS stack in a nutshell. So in the next episode, I'm going to dive deep into each one, and then we're going to expose where Docker can fit in this, basically in this stack, right? So I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what do you think in the comments, and I'm gonna see you in the next one, next episode. Okay, this is definitely, as I speak, this is definitely come a series, right? So just talking, no programming, just for fun, different style today. All right, so Docker and ArcGIS. All right, see you guys in the next one. Stay awesome. Goodbye.